Ed Pink. Ed Pink, of course, everybody knows Ed Pink. And I was running the GTP program and had done the V8 engine. I had done a magnesium block, aluminum heads, carbon fiber everything. And of course, this is in mid-70s. And the whole engine with the ECU weighed 268 pounds. It was 305 inches. And we were making not quite 600 horsepower with it, which was pretty good. Anyway, we had some issues, and I asked Ed, would he take our current engine, look it over, give me some suggestions. Well, that led to Ed taking the program over. And Ed, just super clever guy. The first thing he said, well, why is the engine together with silicone? And I said, because people aren't using the O-rings that are supposed to go in there. Oh, well, we'll never do that silicone again. And you know, Ed was so specific about no leaks, easy to take things apart, how do you work on it? An amazing shop, an amazing person. And his record over the years, I don't think there's many people who even come close to Ed. In the wins, everything. Anyway, Ed boosted the program with his expertise. And wonderful person to work with. Never raised his voice, never, you know, he just worked and made it happen. And the people in his shop were excellent, which you would expect. Ed demands the best, you know, so I just saw where he put his last engine together, which was pretty cool. And Ed, what a career, what a person, great individual, and can't find a nicer person.
Probably one of the coolest things that happened in my career is being able to call one gentleman a dear friend. Ed Pink is that guy. You know, Ed Pink was called the old master when I was probably riding on with training wheels. Back in the 70s, you see these advertisements, Ed Pink, the old master. And you see the advertisements with him doing, you know, this plug wire, or you see him in these yellow jackets. And, you know, Ed was just the guy back then. But then you meet this guy and you start talking to him, you realize that not only was he the master back then, but Ed Pink has a mind that's just absolutely amazing. When he would get into a project, it didn't matter whether it was for a Porsche, it didn't matter whether it was a Land Speed, it didn't matter whether it was the FE Fords. He went to work for Toyota, he did all the work on their midget, he went and did the stuff on their drift cars, of course all the work that he did with Infiniti on the IndyCar IRL stuff. Any engine, he could just sit there and look at it and massage it and rub it, and he'd always find more power. And I remember, like, when he was working for TRD, you know, he and I are joking around, we're going to take a sprint car motor and put it into one of these little Toyotas and put this driver behind the wheel. And it's pretty amazing because we're like, okay, this is a 410 World of Outlaw sprint motor. You know, this guy is going to absolutely lose it. So we start playing with it and everything. We get, you know, no rules, so let's make a longer stroke, let's get all this stuff. We put this absolute monster of this engine together. And they get out there and they're doing filming on the Canyon Road out in California. And the driver gets out and said, yeah, it's pretty good up high, I need some more down low. You know, and so, you know, Ed calls me on my cell phone from the event, and, you know, and the thing is, instead of just telling him to shut up, Ed was the guy like, okay. And so we went and totally redesigned this valve train system to work with that head, to take this 450-inch sprint car motor and focus the peak torque for the transients down around 3,500, 4,000. And some have still turned 9,000. And I remember working on it. I don't think there was anything like that at the day. And we learned things in that sprint car that we could, in the drift car, that we could apply for sprint cars, because you start thinking about it and go, sprint cars don't have a transmission, they don't have a clutch. They're, if somebody gets on the brakes and then can drag the field down and then shoot off from the line, hey, here's something that Ed was playing with a drift car, which we all made fun of back in the day, and applying the same technology to a sprint car. The midget motors he built probably outran everything, on the track. You look at just the way, from the single overhead cam, the camera motors, he was the guy from that. We made special cores for him for that. Just anything you could imagine, and just total insight. I guess what happened later in the NASCAR days is that to kind of save the engine shops, their intellectual property, what they started to do is make engine builders into specialists. So you had one guy who's like, this guy's a valve train guy. Then you had another guy, he's a top of the piston guy. Then you have another guy, and the top of the piston guy is probably really close with the combustion chamber guy. Then you got another guy that's rings and bottom of the piston. Then you got a rod and crank guy. You've got a cylinder bore guy. You've got everybody who has these different levels of expertise in a certain small window of the engine. What makes Ed Pink and his generation special is that you could ask Ed about any question on an engine and get a great answer. If you want to ask him about rod bolts, he knew about rod bolts. He knew about connecting rods. He knows about counterweights. If you want to talk to him about cylinder bore finish or rings or pins or how the bottom of a piston should be constructed. If you want to talk about the valve guides, if you want to talk about valve seats, any part of the engine, and just look at his son and how much success he's had in the carburetors. Ed Pink may be one of the world's best carburetor guys, and he wouldn't even consider that on his resume. When you reach a level where your weaker skills are world class, that's when you get to be called the old master.